In today's clip, I will take you through step by step how I created this observational drawing of an eye. The first thing I'm going to talk about is equipment. In today's clip, I used a selection of pencils, my Mono Zero eraser, blending stumps, a mechanical pencil and a kneadable eraser. Links to all of these are in the description below. I'm going to get straight into the tutorial, and I started by drawing a circle and then drawing this squashed lemon shape around it. That's what I call it because that's the easiest way to describe it. Now when you do a drawing, I would always suggest that you work from a reference image because then you will get an idea of where the iris falls within the eye. And the reason that I draw the iris first and then draw the squashed lemon shape around it, that is your outline shape, is because I want to see where the iris falls within the eye. Very often a big mistake that people make is they draw the whole iris. And if you drew your eye like that, your person that you are drawing is going to look very startled and very scared. If you look at someone, their iris is not completely circular within the eye. There's always a bit of a overlap between the eyelid and the iris. So please make sure that the first thing you do is look at your reference image or the person that you're drawing just to see where that iris falls. And that's why I like to first draw the iris and then draw the lemon shape around it. So the next thing I'm doing is sketching in the eyebrow and the eyelid just so I've got some context of where everything is. And some tutorials that you see will just draw the eye, which is fine because that's a good starting point, but what I'm doing is I'm showing you all the shading around the eye also because I like to have context. So I'm shading all of the skin tone around the eye first because I always work from the back towards the front, so the background to the foreground, and I'm shading in the direction around the eye. So I'm shading all around the eye, and then what I will do is go in with the blending stump and blend all of those tones before I move on to actually sketching and shading the eye shape. For the sketching section, I am using a HB pencil and I'm shading with HB initially. For the darker areas I will use a B to make it slightly darker, but I'm going in with the lighter pencils at this stage. Once I'm happy with my first layer of shading, I'm going to go in with a kneadable eraser to take out any highlights or lighter areas, and then I go in with a B pencil to start adding some darker details. Now that I need to shade in the white of the eye because it will never be completely white, I'm going in with a H pencil because it's slightly harder, which means it will come out lighter. So I'm going to start adding some layers of H, and then if I want to go darker I can go in darker later. And I'm already taking out some of those areas with my mono erasable, and then after I've added some H layers I'm adding some HB, and later I will add some B layers to those darker edges. So I'm now going to concentrate on the area that's called the tear duct. In order for your eye to look realistic, it's really important that you get this right and that you make sure that you show the texture, which means that you need to include white areas or reflections to show that it's a kind of watery texture. So make sure that you include a variety of tones. I will be using a mechanical pencil just to add some details, and the HB and the B pencil, and then I will rub out some highlights later. So now that I've sketched in the majority of my tones, I'm now going to focus on the iris and the pupil. So I'm sketching in the pupil first, and I'm going to sketch in some highlights. When you are focusing on the iris and pupil area, it's really important that you have some highlights or lighter areas to show the texture of that eye area. So on my reference I can see a couple of highlights, and in one of the highlights I can actually see a reflection of the eyelashes going back into the eye, so I'll add those later. I'm using the mechanical pencil because I want to add some really fine details to the pupil and the iris, those really fine lines I want to add on the iris. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to add the graduated tone going from the edge of the iris into the pupil. So I'm going to start by shading that graduated tone going from the outside into the centre where it gets lighter, and then what I will do is with the mechanical pencil I will start to add all of those fine details, and the mechanical pencil is really useful for getting those really fine details. I'm now going in really lightly with the pencil on the highlight areas, because although they're highlights, they still need a little bit of shading. And I'm now also going back over all of the central area of the iris before I go in with the detail on the mechanical pencil. I'm ready to start shading in the pupil, and I'm going to use 6B, which is the darkest pencil that I have to hand. And I would usually suggest that if you are using a variety of pencils, you use your darkest pencil for the pupil. And I'm now going to start shading in around the top of the iris and darkening up any areas. So now I'm going in with my darkest pencil, which in this instance is the 6B, and I'm adding the lower eyelashes. You will see that these are irregular. The common mistake which a lot of people make is they add the eyelashes and they make them really neat and equally spaced. As you will see, they're going off at different directions. They are not equal length, and they are not exactly on the same line. So again, just take care not to have them equally spaced, because this is a common mistake and it means that they don't look realistic. So now we are going to sketch the top layer of the eyelashes. They're obviously going to be longer, and again I will be using the 6B pencil. I've also put down a sheet of paper to protect all of the work that I've done so far. Because there is quite a lot of soft pencil work here, if I don't put the paper down, there is a chance that this work will be smudged. So now I'm moving on to the eyebrow. I'm using a 6B pencil because I want it to be quite defined, and I'm moving with hairs moving in the direction of the eyebrow, and then I will go back over them using or adding hairs in an opposite direction so that it looks more realistic. I'm also covering the eye with a piece of paper as I did earlier because I don't want to ruin the piece of work, especially with the softer pencil, because it may smudge as my hand moves across the eye. If you enjoyed this clip, then make sure you check out more clips like this in the Portraits playlist. Don't forget to look in the description below for details of products used in today's clip. And if you have any ideas for content or questions, leave a comment below. Finally, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of future content.